Our group is doing Vosotros and Nosotros commands. These are Vosotros commands, and we're going to start with affirmative commands here. So for verbs that are not reflexive, you simply put the infinitive form of the verb, and then you take off the R and add a D. There are no irregular verb forms in the affirmative form. For example, sacar turns into sacad, and pensar turns into pensad. Now it's time for negative commands. Start with the present tense of the yo form, then take off the O. For AR verbs, add the opposite ending of ice, and for IR verbs, add ice with AIS. For reflexive verbs, add the reflexive pronoun os in front of the verb. For example, no tener equals no tengais. No hablar is no hables. Negative commands. There are no changes for verbs ending in AR and ER for negative boot verb commands. Special negative commands. For boot verbs ending in IR, there is a change from O to U and E to I. No dormir is no dormais. No mentir is no mentais. And no divertirse is no os divertis.
Next, we will move on to the irregular commands for Vosotros. The irregulars for positive commands for Vosotros are reflexive verbs and the stem changers. For reflexive verbs, you remove the R at the end of the verb and add os in replace of the R. Some examples are sepiarse, which becomes sepiaos, divertirse, which becomes divertios with an accent over the I, and sentarse, which becomes sentaos. Form changers, there is only one irregular verb for positive commands for Vosotros, and that is irse, which becomes idos. Some irregular negative commands, these are the first type of irregular negative commands are car, gar, and zar verbs. They include verbs like sakar, which becomes sakeis, where the car becomes que. Verbs like hugar turns into hugeis, the gar becomes gue, and almorzar becomes almorseis, the zar becomes ce. And continuation of the irregular negatives, these verbs are dishes, which include dar, which becomes no deis with no accent, ir, which becomes no vayais, ser, which becomes no seais, aber, which becomes no ayais, estar, no estéis, and saber, no sepais.
Okay, now we have some practice with Vosotros. So we have don't eat it, and we have a negative command, so we need a no. Then because we have a feminine direct object of an apple, which is la manzana, we need a la after. And now we need the verb to eat is comer, and the yo form is como, so we get rid of the o and add ice because comer is an ER verb. So there we go. And then don't fall asleep. We have another negative command, so we need to start with a no. The verb to fall asleep is dormirse, and because it is reflexive and the vosotros form, we need an os before the verb. The yo form of dormirse is duermo. Because it is a sandalia verb, there's only half of a stem change. Then we add ice because it is an IR verb. The verb to pay is pagar. Because it is positive, we drop the R in pagar and add a D. Him is a direct object, so we add a lo after the verb with positive vosotros commands. And we don't need an accent because of the D and the second to last syllable with the O. Next we have a negative command, so we start with a no. For negative commands, we place the direct object before the verb. The it in this situation stands for information, which is feminine and singular, so we place a la before the verb. The verb to know is saber, which is irregular in the command form, and is made into sepais. The verb to take out is sacar, so we get rid of the R in sacar and add a D, making sacad. The homework is la tarea, so we put that after the verb. We start with a no for negative commands. The book El Libro is masculine and singular, so we add a lo before the verb. Normally we would take the yo form of dar, which is the verb to give, and replace the ending according to the ending of the verb. But the verb dar is irregular in the Vosotros command form, so we use des. The verb to have fun is divertirse. We are in the positive Vosotros command form, so we get rid of the R in divertir and would normally replace it with a D, but because it is a reflexive IR verb, we add os after the second I in divertir, making divertios. Don't forget to add the accent on the second I because it is an IR reflexive verb. The verb to wake up is despertarse. For the positive Vosotros command form, usually we would drop the last R in despertar and add a D to make despertad. But because it is a reflexive, we replace R with Os instead of a D. It is an AR reflexive verb, so we don't need an accent.
For a basic AR verb like hablar, start with the yo form, then drop the O and add amos. For a basic ER verb like comer, start with the yo form, then drop the O and add amos. For a basic IR verb, start with the yo form, then drop the O and add amos. Stem changes only occur in the IR verbs in nosotros, affirmative, and negative. The O changes to a U and the E changes to an I. In dormir, start with the stem change and the yo form and drop the O and add amos. In nosotros negative form, follow the same rules as nosotros positive forms, but have no at the beginning. In caminar, start by adding no at the beginning, then change to the yo form and add amos. In direct and indirect objects, place all direct objects and indirect objects at the end of the verb form. In traer los papeles a mí, start with the yo form, then drop the O, add amos, and add me los at the end, and add an accent over the A. And then for nosotros negative, place all direct and indirect objects at the beginning in the following order. No reflexive indirect direct verb. For traer los papeles a mí, no traer los papeles a mí, no me los traer, no me los traigo, and then drop the O and add amos.
Now we're going to be learning about the irregular forms and reflexive of the nosotros form. There are 7 irregulars you can remember by the acronym DISHES. The D in DISHES stands for DAR, and its irregular in the nosotros command is demos. Remember, any AR verb will change to end with amos, while an ER/IR verb will change to end in amos. The I in DISHES stands for ir/irse. The irregular of ir is vamos, while irse will become vamonos. Vamonos is the only nosotros command with an accent. The third letter of DISHES is the S, which represents ser. The irregular form is seamos. The H of DISHES is haber, but we do not need to worry about this one. The E of DISHES represents estar. The irregular nosotros command of estar is estemos. And the final letter of DISHES is another S, this time standing for saber, which will translate into sepamos, which could be the trickiest irregular to remember of the 7. One more note, if you want to form any of these irregulars as negative commands, simply add a no at the beginning of the statement. There are 3 more irregular rules that we have to remember, and they are the rules of cargar-zar. The example of a car verb is buscar, which will change to busquemos. Again, any AR verb will end in amos, while the ER/IR verbs will end in amos. The example of a gar verb is llegar, which will be lleguemos as a nosotros command. And the final irregular ending is zar, represented by comenzar and this command will change to comencemos. The final lesson today is how to form a nosotros command with the reflexive verb. Let's practice on acostarse. First, we write the command as we normally would, acostemos. Although acostarse ends in AR, we have to change it to end in amos. Next, we remove the S from the end and are left with acostemo. Thirdly, add a nos on the end, so now we have acostemonos. The final part to forming a reflexive is adding an accent to the first vowel before the M. Our final product is going to be read as acostémonos. Remember, if you want to form a negative reflexive nosotros command, just add a no at the beginning.
Let's practice the nosotros commands. Let's play soccer. This command is affirmative, and remember the cargars are endings. This is a gar ending, so we need to add GUE. So in the end, the command will be juguemos al football. Number 2, let's go to bed. Again, it's affirmative, but it's also reflexive. So when it's reflexive, you drop the S in both amos and amos and add nos. The stress should end on the last syllable if it ends in a vowel N or S. The command is acostémonos. Let's start the test. This one is negative, so add a no in front of the verb, then add the ending amos or amos depending on whether it's AR or ER or IR. This is no empezamos al examen. Let's attend the concert. This is affirmative, so determine whether to attend ends in AR or IR. So if it ends in an AR, it is an amos, and if it ends in ER, IR, it is amos. So asistamos al concierto. Let's not lie. It's negative, so put the no in front of the verb, and then determine whether it ends in amos or amos. No, and then when the verb is an IR verb in the nosotros form, you will change the E to I, creating no mintamos. Number 6, let's read a book. It's affirmative, so determine if the verb ends in amos or amos. So the ending command would be leamos un libro. Number 7, let's not tell your secret. This is a negative, so put the no in front of the verb and determine whether it ends in amos or amos depending on the verb ending. Decir is irregular, so the command will be no digamos su secreto. Number 8, let's dance tonight. This is affirmative, so determine whether it ends in amos or amos. Bailemos esta noche.